With the recent release of The Wild Robot, we have a new entry into the ever-expansive Dreamworks Theory. In a time where every other movie is a remake, spin-off, or sequel, it's refreshing to get a movie not tied to any other film, one that has a unique animation style and a great story that makes this the best film currently out in theaters in my opinion, which is especially refreshing with the way Joker 2 is performing right now. With that though, welcome to Big Flick Energy, and let's get right into how the Wild Robot fits into the Dreamworks Theory. For starters, since this is the first Dreamworks video in a while, it's only fair to give a recap of what the Dreamworks Theory itself is. At the beginning of humankind, the cavemen took a leap to the other side of the world in crudes, to help kickstart evolution with this mystical world similar in some ways, but evidently different in many others from ours. These cavemen evolved depending on their surroundings into humans, trolls if they moved underground, ogres if they moved into the swamps, and other variations. As time passes and we begin to meet more of these mystical creatures in Shrek and trolls, humans don't take kindly to the natural world, and under the order of the eventual King Arthur from Troll Hunters, and under the Vikings in How to Train Your Dragon, many mystical creatures are killed off, the only survivors being trolls that went underground, talking animals and wizards that could hide in plain sight, monsters taken in by the government in Monsters vs. Aliens, and the dragons seen in How to Train Your Dragon: The Nine Realms. Eventually, as time passes, the most prominent of the mystical creatures, the talking animals, take back control of different aspects of the world, with Mr. Peabody the dog creating time travel, Diane the fox being voted in as governor, Turbo the snail winning an F1 race on a global platform, and Barry the bee going to court against the humans and winning the court case, at a point where nobody even questions animals talking. Although animals have infiltrated many aspects of human life, they are still looked down upon by some humans, and eventually the animals rise up against the humans to take back the world they lost so many years ago, because of King Arthur. And they do this through the use of mystical powers they're given, like Chi through Kung Fu, and being a dark mage like Veruca in the Kung Fu Panda franchise. This being magic provided to them by the Boy on the Moon, who is a key player in Rise of the Guardians and shows up at the beginning of every Dreamworks movie, establishing that they're all connected in some way, shape, or form. If you would like to watch a more extensive version of this where I also go into the 2D films eventually, but first the original video, I have the original Dreamworks Theory video that all of you can watch. It's available on my channel. So, where does the Wild Robot fit in? Well, the basic plot synopsis goes as follows. Shipwrecked on a deserted island, a robot named Roz must learn to adapt to its new surroundings. Building relationships with the native animals, Roz soon develops a parental bond with an orphan gosling. So when we see Roz crash on this island, it's evident this story takes place in a different time period. She's a personal helper robot that needs to complete whichever task she is given, as that is how Universal Dynamics programmed her to be. The problem is, she was programmed to help humans, not animals. So when she crash lands in the wilderness and is forced to find an animal to help, she has to learn their ways, starting with their language, which apparently all animals speak the same language, which is pretty important because it unveils to us that eventually when Kung Fu Panda takes place, not every animal actually became a talking animal like Puss in Boots or Mr. Peabody. Rather, they all already could communicate and are most likely just using that same language after they've made the world theirs. This is the same way as we see it in the Madagascar films and in Over the Hedge. But Roz later learns their language and begins to raise a baby goose as her own, with this goose eventually becoming extremely knowledgeable in robotics, but having no natural instincts as a goose. That is, until he eventually learns to fly and joins the other geese in their migration. When this happens, we'll see Roz discover another crashed robot from Universal Dynamics that shows her the world she comes from and where she is supposed to belong. This world is 100% the future, which sets this world in a time period for ahead of any of the human stories we've seen in the timeline, and I believe gives us something extra to work with. You remember when I mentioned animals are now being respected but are still looked down upon by humans? The Wild Robot feeds into that. In that video from Universal Dynamics, we see that in this futuristic society built by humans, only humans live there. They're the rich in this world, and the only way for the animals to make it in the world is to steal whatever they can because they aren't going to be given anything. This is even more true when we see the goose migration take a turn to take rest in the Universal Dynamics headquarters. We're at a point in the future where a clear differentiator is true, that talking animals are respected, but if you can't communicate with humans, you're looked at the same way you have always been, as a wild animal, and when the geese are found by Universal Dynamics, they call it an infestation, try to kill the geese and actually succeed in killing their leader, Longneck. Not every animal can become a talking animal, so the wild robot gives the answer to how the world treats those animals, which gives even more of a reason for these animals to rise up against the humans, which I'll get into even more later. But as the story moves along, eventually the geese return home from their migration and Roz is still there. But Universal Dynamics finds her and tries to take her back to the headquarters. But she doesn't want to go back and sides with the animals, calling herself a wild robot. This is where I believe the first battle of the eventual war between humans and animals takes place. In a battle I'll call the Battle at Wild Island. I'm calling it Wild Island because there's no official name for it from what I know, and it makes sense based off the story. So in this battle, the animals will eventually defeat the robots that are fighting on behalf of the humans, but the damage done to Wild Island will be extremely immense, to the point that Roz decides to go back to Universal Dynamics to keep her new animal friends safe. As she goes back, she mentions that although she'll be reprogrammed, she'll always remember Brightbill the goose with her heart. Come the next migration, Brightbill sneaks into Universal Dynamics headquarters, sees Roz and she recognizes him, and the movie ends. Now, while this film didn't give a clear next story from here, it definitely left it open-ended, where now Roz at Universal Dynamics knows Brightbill, but also knows the only way back to him will be the end of Universal Dynamics. So this is where it gets interesting. Is Universal Dynamics the main player in this war between animals and humans? Did the wild robot just give us a name to the opposition in the war that would eventually lead to the world of Kung Fu Panda? I don't know if they're the main player, but I believe the second battle that follows up the battle at Wild Island would be the one to lead to an eventual war. You see, I don't want to say exactly what the Wild Robot 2 would look like, but let's assume it sees Roz reframing with the animals, who see the only way to free Roz is by destroying Universal Dynamics. With this now being a world where humans know animals are smarter than they've been leading on, the geese helping take down Universal Dynamics alongside a robot who has become a wild robot siding with the animals would be taken as a personal attack by the humans, and they would see it as a threat, potentially deciding to start a war against the animals on Wild Island. But with so many talking animals having prominent roles in the world by the time the wild robot, with being governors and genius scientists, and also the organization we saw in the Penguins of Madagascar movie where animals are literally spies and they could take out humans if they wanted to, they are not going to allow their animal brothers and sisters to get killed when the first mover in this fight were the humans when they killed Longneck, the leader of the geese. Now, outside of the wild robot showing us the first battle in the eventual war between the humans and animals, it also showed us that while not all animals learn to speak the human language, they pick up on human characteristics similar to the animals from Madagascar and the animals from Over the Hedge, as in this film, they tell each other bedtime stories and Roz eventually builds them a house they all live in together. So when the time comes from the world of Kung Fu Panda, this world of animals that act like humans makes a lot of sense. Another aspect that is pretty interesting for this world is how it connects into Shark Tale. In Shark Tale, all the animals are living lavishly under the sea in a world that evidently has technology, so it's unlike Kung Fu Panda. Where did this tech come from? Could it have been a gift from the krakens that rule over them as seen in Ruby Gillman? I go into detail of how Ruby Gillman fits into the Dreamworks Theory in another video I made about that film, but it could instead have been in part from these robots that get struck by lightning, that are sent over sea by Universal Dynamics, and rather than landing close to shore and on Wild Island like was Roz's case, they sink to the bottom of the ocean for these sea creatures to use to build their own underwater cities. I would also say that for Shark Tale, it's very much an isolated society where they probably didn't have as tough of a time in this war. They probably could have started their own civilization far before the ones on land did, especially with the help of the Krakens from Ruby Gilman. So I already mentioned that The Wild Robot takes place as the latest point in time where we'll see humans in this world up until now, which means that it takes place after the bad guys. Which the bad guys, we already have a society where animals and humans are living together, but humans still look down upon the animals. Which means that if The Wild Robot is the last film to take place with humans, right after that, there are no more humans. So you can either watch Shark Tale or Kung Fu Panda next, depending on which you think takes place first. I'm saying it's Shark Tale, simply because I think it would be pretty cool to finish this world with Kung Fu Panda. But Shark Tale is a world where we now know that a lot of this technology may have been given to them by Universal Dynamics, or it may just be technology that was left over from that eventual war that they were able to use and they were able to build into their own society. And after that, we have Kung Fu Panda, which is the final film franchise that shows us what happened after that war. It gives us an answer as to who won the war that we see the first battle of in The Wild Robot. So overall, The Wild Robot is a film that is extremely important to the Dreamworks theory, as it shows us how these animals eventually learn to live together, escaping their programming of eating each other and being predators and prey. A way in which the sea creatures from Shark Tale discovered technology, how the animals have human-like activities they partake in, which makes the transition to Kung Fu Panda more obvious, and most importantly, The Wild Robot gives us a look at the first battle in the eventual war between the humans and animals with the battle at Wild Island. With the war being the piece of the puzzle from the Dreamworks theory that was least explored up until now, a movie that shows how it starts makes The Wild Robot an integral part of the Dreamworks theory. So with that, thank you for watching this video. Please let me know down in the comments your thoughts on The Wild Robot as a movie, your thoughts on The Wild Robot as part of the Dreamworks theory, if you think The Wild Robot is the start of the eventual human-animal war, or if you think this movie breaks the theory altogether. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and see you all next time on the Dreamworks theory and on Big Flick Energy.